I have a tiny bit of vodka because I genuinely don't want to do this, so bottoms up. Hello friends, my name is Jasmine and I'm an illustrator, and if you are new to my channel, which is very likely, welcome! On June 1st, I am planning on launching my sci-fi webcomic called Spacewarriors on Instagram and on Webtoons. Now, it's technically a relaunch because as of last year, I published the entirety of part 1, so now I'm technically working on part 2. When I start republishing it on June 1st, it will be part 1, but I'm planning on doing a ton of edits before I do that. So part 1 is going to look a little bit different from the part 1 from last year. And that's the subject of today's video. I will be starting those edits today. To be perfectly honest, I'm a little bit terrified because it's kind of like going through old work, cringing, and then having to fix it all. And I probably won't even really be able to fix it completely because no one's perfect. So overall, I definitely feel like I'm not going to be enjoying this process as much as if I were to be making completely new art. But this is a necessary component in this whole process, and the story does need to be improved a lot before I release it out into the public sphere again on June 1st. So I would like you to come along with me and see what that process looks like, why I chose to make certain edits, at least aesthetically speaking, and see what we can improve, and maybe you might learn something new about composition, colors, anatomy, and such, etc., etc. I honestly don't know myself because I try to avoid reading old pages because parts of me die when I do. Come along and join me on me basically critiquing my own work. Yeah, I think that's technically what we're doing here. Anyways, I have a tiny bit of vodka because I genuinely don't want to do this, so bottoms up. Let's do this. Okay, so first things first, I gotta get organized with all the files in one place. I had uploaded all of those old comic pages onto the cloud, so I re-downloaded them, and here you go. Part 1 was divided up into chapter files, and as you can see, that was back in the day when I was still using Photoshop. Oh goodness. Now I can't stress enough just how important it is that you keep yourself organized with your comic files. As your comic pages start accumulating, you're gonna have to devise a very, very good filing system for holding all of your pages. Now, this means having a folder for your software files, like Clip Studio Paint files or whatever software you use, having a folder for your finished comic pages in large size, so that when you if it's a webcomic or you're planning on printing it in book form, that you want to have a high resolution version of it. So you do want to have a folder for the large version of those comic pages. You also want another folder for the smaller version of your comic pages for web display. Now, if you want to be posting your artwork on social media, you might want to go for smaller sizes. As well as in certain platforms like Webtoons, they will only take a certain size. So you can't upload a comic page that's too large. You might want to consider having 2 different size versions of each comic page, and you don't want to be mixing those up. Also, you don't want to have too many comic pages in one software file. If your chapters include 50 pages, your Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint file might be really big and it will slow your computer down. So dividing that chapter into 2 files, that's another way of doing it. And yeah, you're gonna have to figure out a naming system that will make sense so that in a year's time when you open up your files again, it'll make sense. For me, I actually changed my filing system halfway through because I did realize that some of these chapters were way longer than others, so I did have to make a few changes. Oh no! So one of those files, it won't open. That means it just won't open. I have two choices. No, I don't have two choices because eventually I'm going to need those files to be large. Let's get back into the zone here. One of these files won't open. It's corrupted. So what does that mean? It means it's lost forever and ever. That also means that I can't go into it and do any edits. What pages are we talking here? That was probably... I'm going back to the Spacewarriors website where I used to post the pages, and it looks like what I lost was the point where the characters bump into the dinosaur bones. All of that is lost. I mean, do I need to redo those? I don't think so. I think they look pretty good. I do believe I saved their high-res version. I might not have to redo those pages. They look pretty good. Do they? I would say so. When it comes to corrupt files, there's no way to prevent that from happening. The only way you can not be completely screwed by that is to save multiple versions of the same files. But the thing is, I don't have a lot of space on the cloud or on my computer or my external hard drives to save copies of more copies. I suppose we can just call this a casualty. Why don't we start from the first file, and then once we get to this part of the chapter, we'll see if we need to fix anything. If we do need to fix it, I don't have the file for it, but I do have the drawings. That will entail having to rescan those drawings and just recolor them all over again. But from what I see here, I don't see any glaring errors, so maybe crisis averted? We need more tea. Also, let's set up the Cintiq so that we can dive into the actual digital artwork, which is what you probably want to see, not me going crazy. I do have this big operation going on. I'm trying to fill this whole vessel with iced green tea. This is the first batch, a whole full teapot's worth of water, so I still have a long way to go. Alrighty, so here we are inside Clip Studio Paint. On page 4 here, I noticed Kitty's ears are too small, so let's go ahead and fix that. The next big change was how the orange planet called Gamma 3 was illustrated. Now, past me missed the mark on creating a visually interesting planet. Every time I've seen the pages featuring it, I feel underwhelmed as it doesn't match what I was imagining. So let's also go through all of the pages that feature Gamma 3 in this first chapter and give it a facelift. I think what the planet needed was more contrast to stick out, and as you'll see, updating it meant doing a few key adjustments. This included drawing the stripes, coloring it with stronger colors, adding an aura around it, and inserting a little bit of a shadow for volume. If you're wondering what brushes I'm using inside Clip Studio, nothing fancy really. To redraw any lines, I'm using the pencil tool, and for coloring, I use a brush I made that is just a basic flat coloring brush with no texture. Along with updating how the planet looks, I redrew over things that were a little bit off, like the control board's silhouette. Because everything is hand-drawn, the curved lines look wonky, and I'm officially sick of seeing wonky lines, so let's redraw those with the pencil tool. Because we're gonna need 110% to get the right curve. Stabilization, which you can find right here. I'm really terrible at freehanding curves, so it's pretty hilarious how Space Warriors' visual language involves mostly curves. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself, you guys. Along with vastly improving the line art, there are some mistakes that I am very happy to finally correct. They were too small to justify spending time on fixing before, so now I can show you just what some of those mistakes were, and I hope you don't commit these. So I recently learned how to save a color palette on Clip Studio. This is really important because if you're coloring sequential work, there will be scenes and characters that are repeating, and you're inevitably going to be coloring the same things over and over again. So you do want to have those colors saved somehow so you can hit that level of consistency. In the past with Space Warriors, I had a layer dedicated solely for picking them out with the eyedropper tool, such as the characters' uniforms and that very specific shade of pink in the ship's interior. But somehow in the process, the eyedropper would pick out an in-between color. Not only that, but the colors in that layer aren't correct. Let me show you right here. On the left side are all the colors for VODKA, and for some odd reason that I don't remember, I have 2 magenta colors for her uniform, and there shouldn't be 2. I didn't realize this problem until a quarter into coloring part 1. So there are many pages that have the wrong magenta color on her uniform. So having this new color palette set on the Clip Studio workspace is useful to avoid miscoloring a repeated color. If you didn't know about this feature, well, now you know. Don't make this silly mistake. Another small adjustment I will be making in nearly every single comic page in part 1 is making sure their uniforms are consistent. And believe it or not, I kept changing my mind with a few little details about their uniforms, like the existence of a shoulder seam here, or Yuka's waistband. And for some reason, I gave Euros these little details on the back of his boots that I very quickly abandoned later. So these are all very rookie mistakes, and yeah, you can avoid these by just being more careful. I have also improved a lot on my anatomy drawing skills. I mean, I'm nowhere near where I'd like to be, but I'm much better at drawing Uros than when I first started drawing Space Warriors, so going back to fix proportional issues is both horrifying, but in the end, satisfying. You might see that I didn't go ahead and just redraw all of the characters, and that's because I want to keep that hand-drawn feeling. If I completely draw it all digitally here, you'll notice the difference. And ultimately, the main purpose of this whole re-editing session is just to update and enhance these old pages, not so much completely redraw them. So those were the edits for the first 20 pages of part 1 of Space Warriors. I will be making more of these vlogs where I share more comic making tips while I critique and fix old pages for the relaunch on June 1st. If this has been helpful to you, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel for more art content, and I guess I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching!